In today's video, we'll be making some creatively charming DIYs using Dollar Tree wood. So let's get started. For the first DIY, I'll be making a beautiful tray, and I'm starting with this piece of plywood from Dollar Tree. It's about 12 inches, and I thought it was just perfect for what I had in mind. I was originally searching Amazon for some Moroccan tile adhesive, and they have some beautiful individual peel and stick tiles, but then I came across this gorgeous tile pattern wallpaper, and honestly, it was an even better deal since it's a whole roll, and I just love the soft colors. So I'm cutting out just the amount that I need, and instead of covering the entire 12-inch piece, I decided to cut out 4 tiles from the wallpaper design and then trim the wood down to fit, but you could definitely cover the whole thing if you prefer. Next, I'm going to add a wooden border, and for that, I'll be using these square dowels, which you can grab from your local hardware store like Lowe's or Home Depot. Now, I'm trimming the plywood down to match the size of the tiles, and I'm also leaving a little extra space all around so the dowels can sit on the wood itself. That way I can glue them right to the base instead of on top of the wallpaper. Since the plywood is pretty thin, I just score it several times with a utility knife until it cuts clean right through. Then I trim the square dowels so they frame the square perfectly, and of course the length will depend on the size of your dowels. After that, I go ahead and adhere the wallpaper to the center of the wood, and I peel back just one edge of the backing, line it up carefully, and then smooth it down as I continue peeling the rest. Before gluing the dowels down, I wanted to stain them first, so one of my favorite stain shades is dark walnut, and so to mimic that color, I'm layering apple barrel's burnt umber as the base, then blending in a little bit of nutmeg brown for warmth, and since I also added a little bit of black to deepen the shade, I mixed in just a tiny bit of brown oxide to keep that cozy warmth from getting lost. I added a little water to thin down the mixture, and then I just brushed it on the dowels like a stain, wiping it down right away so the wood grain still shows through. And you know, you can totally play around with the mix. Brown oxide will add more warmth, while black deepens the color and takes away that orangey red undertone. Either way, it turns into such a beautiful rustic shade. Okay, so now I'm just positioning the dowels before gluing them down, making sure everything lines up perfectly. I'm using some 1x2s to keep these sides nice and flush, and then I just run a strip of wood glue along the dowels and set them in place. For legs, I'll be adding these wood pieces from Dollar Tree, and they usually have different kinds throughout the year. These ones are little snowmen, and I always grab a bunch whenever they're in stock. Before I attach them, I went ahead and brushed some of that stain on the back side too, just to finish it off. And honestly, I love how the frame looked on its own. It could totally be just a cute decorative frame, so I was a little torn between keeping it as a frame or turning it into a tray, and I'll show you both looks and you can let me know which one you like better. But either way, I think it's so beautiful and I'm really happy with how it looks. For the next DIY, I'm putting together a cute little recipe stand, and I'll be using Dollar Tree's bamboo cutting board. I'll also be pairing it with one of their 1x2-inch wood pieces. I'll be trimming the wood to the width of the board, so I just mark it, grab my little miter box and saw, and I cut it down. These pieces aren't super dense, so they're actually pretty easy to cut through. I'll be staining the wood using that same combo of apple barrel's acrylic paint from the last DIY, so burnt umber will be my base color. Then I'm adding a little nutmeg brown to lighten it up and bring in some warmth, and since I'll be deepening it with a bit of black, I'll also mix in just a tiny bit of brown oxide to keep that earthy warmth. Then I just add a splash of water to thin it down so it brushes on more like a stain. For the cutting board, I'm just using a cloth to apply the stain instead of a brush, so I just work in small sections, wiping the mix on and then flipping it to a clean side of the cloth to wipe it off right away. Now, I've made something similar in the past with their smaller cutting board, and I wanted to make a larger one. Next, I apply the stain onto the cut piece of wood, and I decided to go a little darker on this one for some contrast, and I believe I added a little more black and brown oxide to the mix as well. And these dried down so beautifully. Next, I add some glue onto the 1x2 and attach it to the board, making sure it's standing upright and flush along the bottom. And then I just clamp it in place and let it dry completely. I thought it'd be nice to add some hardware to hold a phone or tablet or even a recipe book in place. And I love these metal drawer pulls from Dollar Tree. I thought the gold was just perfect and it really elevated the whole thing. It does come with screws, but I'm just using E6000 to hold it in place. I wanted to have the option to recline it back a bit, so I'm gluing one of these small chalkboard easels from Dollar Tree onto the back. I love this little hack. It's super easy, and once it's glued on, it's actually really sturdy. I use a combo of E6000 and hot glue so it holds strong right away, but it also sets permanently. The last time I made one of these, I added some stenciling, but honestly, I really love this version just the way it is. But if you want to quickly dress it up, some nice options are those Dollar Tree puffy metallic stickers. You can add one or several, and it can add a little pop of character or make it feel a bit more custom. Just reinforce it with some glue. But for me, I'm keeping it as is. It's simple and understated, but in a really elegant way. For the next DIY, I'll be making a cute little planter box. I'll be using 3 of Dollar Tree's wooden trays, gluing the ends together to create one long base. One thing I noticed is that these trays aren't all perfectly the same size. They're close, but I did have to shift them around a bit until they fit together nicely. I'm using wood glue to attach them together, but hot glue works fine too. And then I clamp them together really well to make sure they bond, and then I let that dry completely. Once that's dry, I just give the whole thing a light sanding, and these wood trays usually have a little dried glued spots that can pop out once you stain it, so I'm trying to minimize that as much as possible. Okay, so I'm mixing up my own stain again using Apple Barrel's acrylic paints. I start with burnt umber, and then I add some nutmeg brown, a little bit of brown oxide, and just a touch of black. I also thin it down with a little bit of water so it brushes on like a stain. Of course, you can totally use any color you like. You can stain it or even paint it. And then I'm just applying it with a cloth, but I also use a brush to get into those hard to reach inner corners and edges. Now I'm putting some peel and stick paper on the surface, so I'm not too worried about getting the paint perfectly even underneath. After the first layer, I decided to add another one because I wanted the wood stain to come out a little darker, and I really love how deep the colors look at this point. Okay, so you could totally stop here, but I decided to add a little more detail and also cover up those joined areas. I'm using a couple of paint stir sticks, just measuring them to the height and trimming them down to fit. I'll be placing some on the 4 corners too, and so after cutting them to size, I did trim them in half. I'm going to paint these pieces white for some contrast, but you could definitely paint them the same color as a wood too. So I'm just lightly dry brushing the paint over the wood, so a little bit of that wood underneath still shows through. For the surface, I thought I'd use one of Dollar Tree's peel and stick wallpapers. They have so many patterns to choose from, and so I picked out this adorable green leaf design, and it's one of my favorite ones. So I'm just trimming one piece to fit inside, and then I use that as my template to cut out 2 more. To stick them down, I peel back a small piece of the backing paper first, and then I press that on the wood and slowly peel away the rest, and then I smooth it down. Then I just use a craft knife to trim off the excess for a clean edge. Okay, so here I'm gluing those trim wood pieces in place. I'm adding the larger ones right over where the tray meets, making sure it's centered. And the smaller ones go in the corners, and it gives it such a nice finished look. Now that it's all together, I kind of thought the white was looking a little too bright. Probably should have stained it before painting, and so I'm going to go over it with some antique wax to bring in a little warmth. And after that, I went back over it lightly again with the white. And this one is all done. Super easy and so cute as a little planter centerpiece, and it instantly gives your table or shelf a fresh, warm touch. For the final DIY, I'll be using one of Dollar Tree's wood blocks. Before painting, I'm giving it a quick sanding all over, especially on the ends to smooth out any rough edges. I'm going for a lighter color on this one, mixing Apple Barrel's Territorial Beige and Khaki, and together they make a soft, earthy color. I'm also adding a little water to thin it down so it goes on smoothly like a stain. So I'm just brushing it over the wood, working in small sections and then wiping it down immediately, and this will dry really fast. I also make sure to apply it evenly on the sides. Now Dollar Tree has these really pretty medallion decor. They have different colors and styles, and I just thought this would be so stunning over the wood. So I'm just removing the jute string and the beads and then prying out the staples. It has such a pretty carved detail with a distressed finish that already looks beautiful as is, so I'm not going to paint it, but you definitely can. And I'm just gluing that right in the center. You could definitely make a pair or even a few more for a set. Now you can lean this against a wall, or if you want to hang it, just screw in a couple of hangers or even some Velcro strips for a clean finish. And this one is all done, and it turned out so pretty. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments below which one was your favorite. Until next time, bye!